In this video, we're going to create a Django website that displays an interactive map for each country in the world using Leaflet, which is an open source JavaScript library for mobile-friendly interactive maps. We're going to pick up where we left off in the last video, and that is in the admin site, which we're displaying all 209 sovereign countries. The one thing I don't like about this, though, right off the bat, is that these countries are not in alphabetical order. So let's take care of that first. So I'm going to Control-C out of our development server, and inside of our world app directory, we're going to open up models.py. And at the very bottom, still within the country class model definition, we're going to add a subclass in here, a meta class, that defines the ordering of our models anytime that we query the model from the database. So it's the default ordering. So we'll do class meta, and under there, we're going to have one attribute, ordering equals name. And basically that's just saying, if we go back up here to the top, we're going to take the name, well, it's not up there. Oh, there it is. Yeah, name. We're going to take the name of the country and use that for our ordering. So let's save that, run our server, see if that works, and go to our admin dashboard, refresh the page, and now we have our countries in alphabetical order. Let's keep things simple initially, and I'm going to show you how to just display a simple Hello World page in Django. So we'll minimize this, get out of our development server, and go into our app directory, which is called world. And in here, we're going to make a directory called templates, which is where Django looks for HTML templates. And in there, we're going to make a template called index.html. And this is going to be a super simple HTML file that has an HTML open close tag, a body open close tag, and it's just going to say hello world as a header one element. Now, inside of our, also in here, we have a views.py file. So let's open that. And this is where we can define what our view does when a user goes to a certain page. So here we're going to make a function called index, which takes a request as an argument. And all we're simply going to do is return that page that we just created, that HTML page. So we can render that out by passing in the same request that we got into this function right here, and then specify the name of the template that we want to display. And in our case, it's index.html. Django's smart enough to know that there's a template subdirectory in our app directory, so we just have to specify index.html here. One last thing we got to do here, we'll go up a level, and inside of our GIS subdirectory, we have a file in here called urls.py. So let's tell Django that we have a new URL in our website. We can do that by adding another path to our URL patterns list here. And let's say when we go to our IP address or our domain name /home, this is what we want to happen. We want to basically execute the code that we just created in our views.py file. So we can specify that by pointing to views.index, which let me finish writing this. We have a file called views, and inside that file, views.py, there's a function called index. And we just have to make sure that we can see that in here. So from world import views. So there's a world subdirectory. Inside of there, there's a views.py file, and we're just referencing the index function that we defined in there. So let's save that and run our development server, see if everything works. So we'll open up our web browser, and instead of going to our IP address 8000 admin, we'll just go to our IP address. And one thing wrong here, we did actually say that we wanted to go to /home because we don't have a page at our root of our website yet. So let's indeed go to 8000 /home, and that will go ahead and load the hello world HTML. Let's take things a step further and display the list of countries on this page. So we'll minimize out of here, get out of our development server, and go into our world app subdirectory. We're going to be working in views.py again. And this time, let's import our model. So from world.models import country. Okay, this is kind of like it should be, if you did watch the last video, this is exactly what we did in the Python shell before. So inside of our index function, what we're going to do is create a variable called countries, and we're going to assign to that variable country.objects.all. So we're just getting a list of all the countries. Now, the render function call actually takes one additional argument called context. So let's make a context variable. Initially, it's just going to be an empty dictionary, but then we can assign one of the keys in the dictionary. We're going to call it countries, and we're going to assign to that this variable that we just created, the countries variable, which is going to be a list of all of our countries from our Django model. Now, the only thing that we have to do is pass that into our render function, so we can do that as the third argument for context. And let's go ahead and save that. Now let's do something with that data in our template. So we can open up the templates file called index.html, and we can still print out hello world, but let's loop over all the countries and print them out on this page. So we can use the Django template syntax, which is curly bracket, %, and then we can do a for loop for each country in the countries variable, which we just passed into the template. Let's just do a paragraph element to start. So we'll print out the country's name. So we have access to all of those attributes that are associated with each country. So we're just going to use the name initially. And then after that, we can close the for loop with end for, one word. And that looks good. So let's test that out. Let's go up a level and run our Python development server. Open up. I forgot a T on the import in views.py. So let me make that fix real quick. Okay, that should be good. Now let's run the server. That looks good. And we'll come back up here, refresh our page. And now we see a list of all of our countries. Next, let's take each one of these country paragraph elements right now and turn them into links, and we'll link them to a page that doesn't exist yet, but we'll link them to a country specific page. So one step at a time, let's just create the links first. So we'll close out of our development server, go into our world app subdirectory, and then our template, we'll just change that up a little bit, index.html. So we'll wrap the country name in an href element, which is a link element, and we'll just leave that blank for now until we get the element closed up here. And the URL, we have a lot of different options. I think one of the most simple options is to just use one of those ISO 3-letter country codes to keep things simple. So let's do that. Let's access our country data, and we'll use country, what is it called? ISO A3. That's one of the columns in our shape file, which is now in our database. So when somebody clicks on this country link, it's going to go to a page / the country's 3-letter ISO code. So let's save that and go up a level, test that out, run our server. We'll refresh the page. All of these should turn into links, and they do. Let's hover over Afghanistan, and you can see down here that it says it's going to go to home/AFG for that, Albania ALB, Algeria DZA, and so on and so forth. Now, if I do click on these pages, they obviously don't exist because we didn't tell Django about them, but we'll take care of that next. So there's 3 things that we have to do here. We have to update our urls.py file like we did before, update our views.py file, and also create a template for each country page. So let's take care of that one by one. We'll close out of our development server, go into, we'll do the URLs first. So let's open up GIS urls.py. And just like we did before with the home page, let's make a page for each country. So what that's going to look like is we'll make a new path in our URL patterns. And this is going to get a little bit complicated, but not too bad. So for each country page, we're going to home / some 3 letters. And those 3 letters are the country code. So let's spell that out here. So when the user goes to the URL or the IP address /home / the ISO code, we are going to execute the function which is not yet defined in views.py called country. So let me explain the syntax here. Anything between this open less than sign and close greater than sign is going to be passed into the function called country in views.py, which we have yet to define. So that'll make a little bit more sense in just a second when we go there and do that. But what that's going to pass in is the value in the URL at that point. So let's go ahead and show you what that actually looks like. So let's open up, let's go into the world directory and open up views.py, and let's make a new function definition here called country, as we defined over in urls.py. That's also going to take in a request, and the argument is called ISO code, as we defined in urls.py. So again, whenever somebody clicks on Afghanistan, it was the 3-letter code was AFG. We're going to get that value assigned to this variable when we execute this. So we can do something with that. We can instantiate the object associated with whatever object or whatever country they clicked on. So let's make a variable called country, and we'll look up in our country objects. We'll get the one that has an ISO A3 code that's equal to the ISO code that we passed into that function. So again, if somebody goes to Afghanistan, AFG is going to be passed in here. We're going to look up in our country objects to see which one has that, and we're going to return that, assign it to the country variable. Now what we can do with that country variable is create our context again. We'll just make that empty dictionary initially, and then we will assign the country data associated with that to the context called country. So the last thing to do, just like we did up here, we are going to return render with the request that was passed in. We're going to load the country.html file, which we did not create yet, but we will create that next. And we're going to pass in the context, which includes the country data. So let's save that, open up our templates directory, and make a new file in there called country.html, as we specified in our views.py file. And in here, we'll start out, again, very simple. We'll just print out the country's name in a header 1 element. So let's see if we did that right. We'll go back to the root of our project, run our server, and open up our application. We'll just go to home for now. Everything loads good here. Let's click on Afghanistan, and I made a spelling mistake. So I said count text instead of context. So let's fix that. Go into world views.py, and yep, there is the mistake. Change that to context. Run the server, refresh the page, see if that works. And the page does load, but it looks like I might have made another mistake here. Let's see what that is. And the other mistake that I made, I'm sorry, this is hard to do these tutorials live and not make a mistake. So I defined the variable as county, not country. So I need to make that COUNTRY, so that we're passing this variable into here. So we'll save that, run our server, hopefully one last time. And if we reload this page, we should see Afghanistan, and we do. So let's see that if that works for Australia. And unfortunately, it does not. It says it returned more than 20. So it turns out that I picked the wrong column here. I'm going to go back into QGIS and show you what I mean. So the ISO A3 code does not actually have a unique value for each country. So some of them have this -99, Australia being one of them. That's why it returned all of these rows matching -99. So a better option than the ISO A3 code column looks like the SOV A3 column. So let's use that instead. We'll go back into our Python code and make that change. So let's go into the world directory, open up views.py, and instead of the ISO code here, A3 code, we're going to use SOV A3. And I said it before, I'll say it again. Hopefully this is the last time I'll do this. Python manage py run server, and we'll test this one out. So we'll go back here, refresh the page. Afghanistan will still go to AFG, but this time Australia will go to -99. And obviously that's because we didn't make the update in our template. So if we go to world templates index.html, we have to link to the SOV A3 as well. So we'll do that here, and I'm not even gonna say it anymore. We're gonna run our server and test this out again. So we'll refresh the page. Afghanistan goes to Afghanistan, and where does Australia go? It goes to AU1, which is perfect. So each one of these should now work, and it seems like they do. All right, it is finally map time. We're gonna need to install 2 Python packages to do what we want. The first one is called Django Leaflet, and you install it with pip install Django Leaflet. And the second is Django GeoJson, which pip install Django GeoJson. We need to get pip, which is a Python package manager, to install these first. So let's take care of that. We'll get out of here. And what we're gonna do is a sudo apt install python 3-pip, yes to continue. And if you're like me, you did not follow best practices to do a sudo apt update first. So you'll avoid that error if you do a sudo apt update to update the references to the packages. And now we can do a sudo apt install python 3-pip. All right, now let's get those Python packages with the pip package manager, pip install Django GeoJson and Django Leaflet. So we'll execute that. And in our GIS settings.py file, let's tell Django about those new apps that we just installed. So we can add 2 more entries in here. One of them is Leaflet, and the other one is DJ GeoJson. So go ahead and save that. All right, now is the most important part of the tutorial where we actually display a map for each country. So we're gonna do that in our app directory inside of the templates, and we're gonna open up country.html. Let's scrap everything that we did in here, and I'm gonna paste in some HTML that I know is working. And I'll explain this line by line. So we're basically loading in the Django apps that we just made Django aware of and that we just installed via pip. We're going to pull in some Leaflet JavaScript and CSS files in our HTML header right here. We're still going to print out the country name and header 1 element. And then we have a div here that we're defining, and we're using the leaflet map template tag, and we're passing it a map with a callback to map init. Now what's map init? Map init is a function that we're defining down here between these 2 script tags. It's a JavaScript function, and it's taking in a map and options as argument. So basically what this is doing, it's creating a GeoJSON object, okay? What we're passing into that is the country. Remember, this is our context that we're passing in, the country context. One of those columns is called geom, G-E-O-M, and that contains the map data, okay? The outline of the country. So we're passing that in from the Django object. We're converting it to JSON, which is something that GeoJSON understands. And we add this one last filter here after this last pipe called safe, just to make sure that all the characters are converted from JSON to something that GeoJSON is going to understand, or from Django to something that GeoJSON is going to understand. So sometimes you can see like %20 in your URL if there's a space, that type of stuff. So that's all happening here. We're passing that into the GeoJSON object, and we're going to add that to the map that we passed in. With that map object, we're going to fit the bounds to the area of the country shape. So that should automatically zoom into just a little bit of padding on each side of the country. And that's about it. So let's save that file and see if everything works. So we will run our server, open up our application, go to our IP address 8000/home, and we still load our countries as expected. Let's click on Afghanistan, and we see the name of the country and the border for Afghanistan. We can zoom out, see that in the context of the entire world. That looks good. let's try one more. I want to do Italy. Let's do Italy. Click on that, and that does pretty much what we expected it to do. So hopefully this video was helpful for you getting set up with Leaflet and Django and GeoDjango. If it was, I have a video about taking your website after you develop it a little bit more and putting it into production as far as a Django website is concerned. So check out that video next. Let me know what you think. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you over there.